And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Greetings, everyone. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. And again, we still have high pressure over northwest Canada. There's an added little feature. We have a weak low and front that's going to be sliding southeastward up the Mackenzie River Valley, and that's going to allow a push of a little colder air in through areas of the interior, and as we go through the course of the weekend, actually be a shot of Arctic air that once again works its way westward across the interior, especially between the Brooks Range and Alaska Range. But it's also going to tighten the pressure gradient in areas along the Brooks Range and say up here through the Tanana Valley. So there are going to be gusty winds develop here for the late week, especially starting Wednesday, but through Thursday and Friday. And also areas along the Beaufort Sea coastline will see some stronger gusty winds. So there'll be areas of blowing snow and colder wind chills as the result of those winds. But in the meantime, VFR conditions prevalent throughout much of the interior mainland, south central, the Panhandle, thanks to this high pressure over here. Meanwhile, we have kind of the remnants, low pressure out in through the western southwest part of the Bering Sea, and just a generally southerly flow of moist and milder air has created widespread lower clouds and a little bit of light precipitation. The wind's not as strong, at least expected here for this Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday compared to what they were Monday into Sunday. So by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, generally VFR conditions again across much of the interior. There could be pockets of IFR along the central Brooks Range that may include areas around Anatuvik, Adigan passes, but otherwise, again, VFR throughout the Panhandle and out here across the mainland. And again, if you're an old aviator, you might call that term CAVU, ceilings and visibilities unlimited. That's the kind of setup we have here thanks to that high pressure. But out over the Bering, we expect lower cloud cover, a little bit of light precipitation here and there, and again, widespread IFR conditions out there Wednesday afternoon. Into Thursday, there could be some pockets of IFR, eastern Alaska Range, areas just north of Fairbanks, White Mountains, back toward the central areas of the Brooks Range, and we still have an area of IFR conditions out across the northern into the eastern, bearing down through the eastern Aleutians. And then coming into Thursday afternoon, we still might start to get a little moisture impact areas, the Copper River Basin up toward the eastern Alaska Range, eastern Kenai, some MVFR to locally IFR conditions. But as I mentioned, that backdoor front will stall out here across the central interior, and that's just going to serve to tighten the pressure gradient. So there's going to be some gustier winds along the Beaufort Sea coast and all through this area of the interior here to close out the week. So for Wednesday, Anatuvik Pass may get down to IFR as that front approaches and kind of slowly comes through that region of the Brooks Range. Adigan Pass also MVFR early Wednesday going IFR. Now further south, all along the Alaska Range on Wednesday, we're expecting VFR conditions, Lake Clark and Merrill going up through Rainy, Windy Pass, and then eastward all the way through Isabel and Mentasta passes. So that's an easy one there with that high pressure and just great visibility with clear skies. Tanita Pass, VFR conditions there as well, coming down across the Copper River Basin, and the colder air still keeping the dry air out over even near the coast here on the northern Gulf Coast. Portage VFR on Wednesday, and then Chilkoot and White, of course, the Panhandle continuing to enjoy VFR conditions. Freezing levels at the surface have come upward into the above the central Bering, into the northern Bering to near St. Matthews, just south of Nunavik Island, into Bristol Bay, and then across the northern Gulf, and then along the outer southern southwest portion of the Panhandle. Freezing levels aloft are not all that high. We have a little pocket of around and just above 4,000 feet, western Brooks Range out there toward Cape Lisburne, Point Lay, and then the remnants, it's now more or less a trough with freezing levels above 2,000 feet southeast Bering. You gotta go way down now in the North Pacific, south of the Gulf, to even get freezing levels above 4,000 feet. And where there is the kind of the remnants of a trough with some precipitation, we could find in those precipitation-bearing clouds above 6,000 feet some isolated to moderate icing there near Bristol Bay and down there through parts of the Alaska Peninsula and south of Kodiak Island. Upper level jet stream winds, we don't have any really strong jet cores. We do have, but this is an indicator, this kind of, notice the northeasterly flow This is at 30,000 feet, a 9,500 knot jet max. That's pulling down some troughiness, cooler air coming in from the north and east. So at 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, we find that northeasterly flow coming into the Beaufort Sea coast and then down along the northeastern quadrant of the mainland. Still strong southerly flow out here out of the western bearing along the Russian coastline. We're looking at winds 45 to 65 knots locally, and then as we bring it down further, on Wednesday, as that front back doors in from the north and east, we are going to see winds picking up across the Yukon Valley, especially middle into upper Yukon, into the Yukon Flats, and then along areas of the Beaufort Sea coast. We have a little circulation of low that's coming up in the Gulf, not especially strong, but there are some winds perhaps to 35 knots just southeast there of Kodiak Island, and then again most of the wind coming onshore there into eastern Asia, but not all that strong for this time of year. So the greatest threat for turbulence on Wednesday will be this area here of the interior between the Brooks and Alaska Range, surface to 5,000 feet. There could be moderate turbulence there. A little bit along areas of the Beaufort Sea coast. The flow tends to be more laminar there, so it's not as bumpy. And then a couple of pockets, perhaps out in the central Alaska Peninsula, and then way back out toward the western Aleutians. There could be, out there toward Shimia, there could be some isolated moderate turbulence, surface to 3,000 feet on Wednesday.